All right, we're going to be tying one of my favorite flies today. It's kind of a variation of two different flies. I can't quite remember the names of them because I haven't used them in so long because I just fished this now. But it's basically a foam back emerger with goose buyout tail or thorax. And it's awesome during the spring, blueing olive. You can also tie it in brown. You can kind of mimic stonefly, stuff like that. So this is size 18. I use this one probably the most often. And we'll be tying this one in a size 16 Tiemco 100 barbless. And for the thread, I use a 16-aught Vivus. This is light brown. I also use brown. And you'll want to tie in right around the 3/4 point. Give it a few wraps. Snip your tag end. And you'll want to bring this to the back of the hook shank, where we will tie in our tail. And I use saddle hackle brown feather. You can pull off a pretty healthy clump, somewhere around 15 or 20 strands, because they're pretty thin fibers, and you'll want to do it about 3/4 the length of your hook shank, and you'll want to tie that in like so. And to kind of build up your thorax, we'll use a bit of that tail, and you'll cut it off right around that 3/4 point. And I like to smooth things over and bring it back. Baetis nymphs are usually pretty thin, so you don't want to make the body of it too thick. And we'll grab one of our goose biots and get this in like an army green color. I've got a few different colors of this army green that varies anywhere from a darker green to kind of a lighter orange, goldish color. And this one's a little bit lighter, but you'll just want to tie that in, bend facing up. And bring that back to the tail. And then bring it back to your 3/4 point. And give it a couple wood finish turns. All right, you can get your bobbin and thread out of the way here. And what I like to do is I like to do my very first turn here with my hand, but things are going to get pretty short pretty quickly, so you're going to want to use your hackle pliers. But why I like using my hand is because these things can sometimes be fragile, especially when you start them. So I can be a little bit more delicate with my fingers than I can with this. And it's easier to get a cleaner wrap around the tail because you don't want to try not to expose any thread. All right, and we'll just wrap that back up to where we made our whip finish turn. Give that a couple wraps. You can release this one here. I like to give it a couple more because these things will slide out on you. I've seen people use glue, but it just seems like extra work for me because I can always get it to work without using it. All right, and you can round that off. And we can start to tie in our wing case. Now you'll grab another set of goose biots. This time we'll get two. Again, you'll tie them bend facing up in sort of an X pattern. Now the bigger you tie them, the more higher up you might want to go. The smaller you tie them, the smaller you might go back on to the point there. And as you can see, these things are tricky. There we go. And you'll tie your other one right on top of it, sort of mirroring the first one you put down. And then you'll want to cut off the tips of the biots right here. And then you can secure the rest like that. And now we'll put in our wing. So this is the foam wing here. And I just go to the craft store to get mine. This is just a big sheet of yellow that I cut into smaller pieces. And so you'll just want to cut off a pretty small strip. With the thickness I use, which I think is pretty thick for the foam you might be able to buy in a fly shop, I try to cut it into like a little square, you can kind of see. And we'll just go ahead and tie that in right on top. And really try to get that squished down. And you'll start to see the taper we're starting to build for the abdomen. So now we can bring our thread back down to about a hook eye's length away from the hook eye. And for the abdomen, we're using Awesome Possum Natural Nymph Dubbing in gray. I find it works pretty well. You'll just want to put a nice thin noodle onto your thread, and you can wet your fingers to sort of help get it on. Give it a couple wraps and start working your way back up. And just add a tiny bit more, and we'll work back down. All right, and now we can tie in the legs. Let's see, so I use green. I also use white. I haven't decided which color I like most. I don't think it really matters. But this is a duck flank. And I've already used this one a couple times because as you can see, it's been cut right there, and it kind of gives you this V shape. And so you can set that right on top and tie that in there. Give that a couple loose wraps, and you can pull this right out and get the length of the legs that you prefer. Usually try to go about 3/4 of the body length. You can sort of play with them, get them into the spot that you like the best. It takes a little getting used to, but once you get the hang of it, I think this method works the best rather than cutting them and tying them in individually. So now that you've got them in sort of a spot that you like, and do a couple thread wraps up back towards the top, and you can cut your excess off flush there. All right, and almost done. We'll start bringing the wing back over, tie that in, give it a couple wraps, and then a couple in front. Now I like to cut facing up towards the hook eye, sort of like this. It gives you a little bit more of an even cut, so you can keep the bulk further away from the hook eye. And now we can bring over the wing case, and again you'll sort of tie it in kind of an X pattern. Tie that one on top of the other. You can sort of, I don't really like that. You want to make sure you're covering up the side. That's going to be your most important, because you don't want your wing to be hanging out. You just want it to be shown on top. So once you've got those on top, I like to again pull them up out of the way, do a couple wraps in front. Go ahead and snip off the excess. A couple wraps to cover them, and go ahead and give it a couple whip finish turns, followed by 4 or 5 more. And there you have it. Catches me a lot of fish here on the tailwaters in Colorado, especially in the springtime, when the water starts to warm up a little bit more. You can pretty much fish this all year round. Obviously a little bit smaller in the winter, but it'll still catch you fish. So there you have it. And you can pretty much see every fiber on that camera. I'm gonna try snipping that out. There we go. Cool. Happy fishing.